For 3 centuries, one empire minted the most stable currency in Asia. No hyperinflation, no debasement, no collapse. Then, in less than 50 years, it vanished, not through conquest, but through a decision that seemed perfectly rational at the time. This is the story of how India's medieval monetary system didn't break, it was replaced. Welcome to the Wealth Timeline, where money, power, and history quietly shape the world around us. Because what happened to the rupee between 1200 and 1500 wasn't just an economic shift, it was a blueprint for how empires lose control without ever realizing it. Picture northern India in the year 1200. The Delhi Sultanate has just emerged. Trade routes stretch from Bengal to Central Asia. Silver flows in from Afghan mines. Gold arrives from East Africa through Arab merchants. And at the center of it all, the tanka, a silver coin so trusted that merchants from Cairo to Canton accepted it at face value. This wasn't just currency, it was sovereignty in physical form. But here's what no one recorded in the chronicles. Every coin minted represented a claim the empire could no longer fully enforce. What no one noticed was the cost. The system began under Sultan Iltutmish in 1236. His problem was simple. How do you control a fragmented empire where warlords, merchants, and regional governors all competed for loyalty? His solution? Standardize the currency. The silver tanka weighed 175 grains. Its purity was guaranteed by the Sultan's mint in Delhi. It carried Arabic inscriptions asserting divine authority, and it worked. For the first time, taxes could be collected uniformly. Soldiers could be paid reliably. Trade routes expanded because merchants no longer had to negotiate exchange rates at every border. The tanka became the anchor of imperial legitimacy. But the system rested on one dangerous assumption, that silver would always flow in. From Afghan mines, from Central Asian traders, from tribute payments. As long as supply remained steady, the currency held. It worked, but only under conditions that would not last. By 1300, the Delhi Sultanate controlled most of northern India. Sultan Alauddin Khalji expanded the system even further. He fixed grain prices. He controlled wages. He used coinage to centralize military funding and suppress regional autonomy. The tanka was no longer just money. It was policy enforcement. And for decades, it delivered real benefits. Famines were mitigated through state granaries. Military campaigns were funded without destabilizing local economies. Trade flourished under predictable taxation. But every success introduced an unintended consequence. The more the empire relied on silver coinage, the more vulnerable it became to supply shocks. When Central Asian trade routes shifted due to Mongol invasions, silver inflows slowed. When Afghan mines reduced output, mints struggled to maintain purity standards. And when regional governors began hoarding silver to fund their own armies, the central treasury faced shortages. The currency still functioned, but its foundation was eroding. The stronger it became, the harder it was to stop. By 1330, the warning signs were undeniable. Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq faced a crisis. Military campaigns were expensive, silver was scarce, and rivals were testing imperial authority. So he made a decision that, on paper, seemed ingenious. He introduced token currency, copper coins, backed not by metal value, but by state decree. Citizens could exchange them for silver tankas at any imperial treasury. The Sultan announced this as a temporary solution to ease liquidity during wartime. Merchants accepted it, governors complied, tax collectors used the new coins. For about 2 years, the system held. Then came the counterfeiting. Copper was abundant. Anyone with a furnace could mint coins that looked identical to the official ones. Within months, markets were flooded with fake currency. The response was predictable. People stopped accepting copper entirely. They demanded silver, but the treasury didn't have enough. By 1334, the Sultan was forced to withdraw the token currency and exchange copper coins for silver at massive losses. Nothing collapsed. And that was the problem. Because the system adapted instead of reforming, the underlying issues were never addressed. Regional governors began minting their own coins. Merchants reverted to barter in uncertain areas. Trust in centralized currency eroded, not through rebellion, but through quiet substitution. The true breaking point came not with a bang, but with fragmentation. By 1398, Timur's invasion devastated Delhi. The Sultanate splintered into regional kingdoms, the Bahmanis in the Deccan, the Malwa Sultanate, the Jaunpur Sultanate, and others. Each issued its own coinage. Each claimed legitimacy through their mints, but none could enforce the kind of monetary unity the early sultans had achieved. The decision that mattered most happened in 1526. When Babur founded the Mughal Empire, he didn't restore the old tanka system. He introduced a new currency framework, one modeled on Timurid practices from Central Asia, incorporating Persian administrative techniques and adapting to the realities of post-Sultanate India. The rupee was born, not as a continuation of the medieval system, but as its replacement. From this point on, the outcome was no longer optional. The old monetary order didn't collapse. It was made obsolete by a system better suited to the new political reality. So who benefited? The Mughals, certainly. Their currency became the standard across the subcontinent for the next 2 centuries. Regional merchants who adapted quickly, Persian-speaking administrators who understood the new system, bankers who facilitated conversion between old and new coins. And who absorbed the cost? Peasants who had saved in now worthless copper tokens. Small traders locked into regional economies that no longer aligned with imperial centers. Craftsmen whose wages were redenominated without negotiation. Power shifted, as it always does, to those who controlled the new system early. The transition wasn't violent, it was administrative. By the time the Mughals consolidated power in the 1550s, the memory of the Tanka had faded into historical curiosity. What remained was a lesson. Monetary systems don't die through mismanagement alone. They die when something better adapted takes their place. Here's what this means for us today. We live in an era where central banks issue currency backed by trust, not metal, where digital payment systems operate parallel to physical cash, where global reserve currencies compete for dominance. The pattern is identical. Monetary systems don't collapse when they fail. They collapse when they become unnecessary. History doesn't repeat events, it repeats incentives. And the incentive to control currency, whether through silver tankas, fiat rupees, or blockchain protocols, remains the most reliable path to power. The question isn't whether today's system will last forever. The question is, what comes next? And will we recognize it before it replaces what we have now? 2 takeaways. Systems fail slowly, then suddenly. Not because they break, but because they're replaced. And human behavior doesn't change. The need to trade, to trust, to transact remains constant. Only the tools evolve. If you enjoyed uncovering this hidden chapter of history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the Wealth Timeline, and turn on the bell icon, because the next story might just change how you see power itself.